What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. I want to chat today about our favorite center, Joe Tippmann, and it seems like there's been a huge mindset shift here with the recent news coming out of training camp about the consistent bad snaps, the errant snaps that are going out to Aaron Rodgers, sailing over his head. You know, we've seen it creep up again at the green and white scrimmage after not really hearing about it for a day or two, but then a couple days prior to that, right? So something that's been on and off, hot and cold type situation with Joe Tippmann. And to be honest, it feels a bit overblown. The tides haven't swayed that much, right? Joe Tippmann coming off of a season where it took him a while to earn starting snaps, get up to the second string, get up to the first string. Injury also kind of helped play a role in that. But honestly, he looked good. He looked really, really good at guard. And then he came in and he worked his way into a solid rookie starting center, one that we were particularly excited about by the time the season actually completed, in a time where there wasn't really much to be happy about as a Jets fan either way. So in the midst of all of these snap problems, it did still get me thinking that while we're highly concerned, Aaron Rodgers hasn't blown up about this. Yes, there's the clips about him being frustrated and different things of that nature, but with all of these problems going on, he's still taking the time out to give him a lot of praise, a lot of comparisons and accolades that bodes well for us and Joe Tippmann's future. Most recently, his comments being that he still thinks he can be an all-pro, right? He mentioned he acknowledged the snap issues and that being a problem, but in the same token, mentioned that, again, he has all-pro caliber potential in his eyes, and I don't think you take the time to boast somebody up to that level if you don't believe it's true. And Aaron Rodgers isn't one to mince words or give out undue accolades, which is why we get hyped when we hear him big upping some of the undrafted free agents that he was working with in years past. Think Jason Brownlee, Xavier Gibson, Irvin Charles, right? We're hyped about the Zach Kuntz news with the chemistry he had during the scout team. So Aaron Rodgers' words go a long way, and it should carry the same amount of weight here. But along that line of thinking, you think about some of the recent all-pro centers coming out, the alien Jason Kelce aside, who locks down the first-team all-pro year after year after year. But second-team all-pro accolades, Frank Ragnow, Creed Humphrey, Corey Linsley, who also in recent enough comments was compared to Joe Tippmann as a guy that he thinks can carry a lot of those same leadership attributes into the offensive huddle. But I'm looking at Frank Ragnow more from a physical standpoint, and then also what Joe Tippmann may be asked to do more of this year, right? Frank Ragnow coming in at 6'5", 312 pounds. Joe Tippmann, 6'6", 313. So similar body types, right? And even the build of the body, right, where the fat and muscle is, etc., doesn't look vastly different. So I think it's a good comp from that standpoint. And then when you look at the backgrounds, right, there's a lot of differences here, a lot of nuances. Joe Tippmann coming out of Wisconsin. I believe Frank Ragnow was coming out of Arkansas with the Razorbacks. So asked to do a few different things. So the skill sharing, right, isn't necessarily apples to apples here. But in the NFL, you don't always go exactly into a scheme that is going to suit what you're looking to do, right? It makes the most sense if you're drafting a guy to do so. But still, sometimes you take the traits and you run with it in the hope that you can work and develop up some of the rest of these things. So taking a look at the Jets, for example, and this is part of why I think he's dealing with some of these issues. The Jets aren't operating this same old handy-dandy playbook that we had last year. Specifically in a run game, we're changing things up, right? We're not purely biased West Coast wide zone running scheme team anymore. We're going to be implementing gap plays. We're going to be implementing power plays, right? Something that doesn't necessarily fit Joe Tippmann's profile. Not saying that he can't do it, but something that he hasn't need to become refined in. And to be honest, I don't think a ton of us would have expected that anyways, but we'll see how that parlays itself into it, right? Not only is Joe Tippmann working with new offensive line mates, he's really this season getting his best chance to work with Aaron Rodgers. Keep in mind, as mentioned, took him a while to work his way up to center last year, and by the time he did, Aaron Rodgers was already dealing with his Achilles injury. But those play a significant part. So I think Frank Ragnow is the long-term ideal picture here, right? Took his third year to earn his second team All-Pro honors. So if Joe Tippmann somehow earns that this year, that's just a huge plus. And keep in mind, all of the things that we praise Aaron Rodgers for should really help Joe Tippmann out as well. The quick release, being able to manipulate the defense, etc., etc. But you take a look at Frank Ragnow's most recent season, 2 penalties all year, didn't allow any sacks. You compare that to where Joe Tippmann is, right? He's coming off 7 penalties, specifically as a center. He had 8 overall, 1 coming at guard, and 3 sacks allowed. So we're not talking about leaps and bounds in terms of work that he needs to do, and that's just from a numbers standpoint. Again, when you turn on the tape, there's going to be a lot of nuance that we need to work on here, but just so you guys have a frame of mind of what we're looking at, it's not like Joe Tippmann is so far out of the picture of being a top-notch center that we need to start looking elsewhere, right? And if we want to feed into that, let's play devil's advocate here. Worst case scenario, going back to what I mentioned before, he looked really, really good as an All-Pro. If, knock on wood, we decide to somehow not pay AVT after this year, or John Simpson doesn't look as great and we want to give Joe Tippmann a look over there because his athleticism is still his best trait. You want to get him into space, be able to knock some guys in the second level, third level on their behinds, really get after some of these guys on these pull and reach blocks. And strength isn't necessarily his A+ game, right? So again, some of these new scheme points that we're going to be working on don't necessarily benefit him. But ultimately, going into this year, I still feel really, really good. Again, we have a lot of time to get this ironed out. For what it's worth, PFF has him ranked as the 23rd best center. So for only having, I think he had somewhere between 7 and 9 games as a center, starting center under his belt, and the other handful of games being at guard. I think we've come out pretty well, right? This is still a guy that is just coming off of being named to the all-rookie team, and many people still peg him to be a breakout candidate. So pump the brakes a little bit is all I'm saying on the Joe Tippmann slander. This is a guy that still has some things to work out, right? We're not talking about, in my opinion, Will McDonald level concerns here. So we'll see ultimately what happens, how that pans around, if these snaps continue to be a problem as we get into these preseason games. And yeah, I think we're having a bit of a different conversation. These are the type of issues you don't want to be killing a drive or series after series before we can even really get anything going. But let me know what you guys think and where you're at on this particular topic, because it seems like there's nobody really in the middle. It's either one far end of the spectrum or another. People aren't concerned at all. They figure he'll get it worked out, or people who think we wasted a second-round pick and got the wrong center drafted last year. But ultimately, again, let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you again. Peace.